Belt squats might be the most seriously underrated tools in strength training. Serious athletes and coaches have been using them for years, but it's only recent that they've been showing up more and more in garage and home gyms alike. This is mainly because belt squats were too bulky, too expensive, or a combination of the two. And that's all changed. So, what I'll be doing today is something that I've wanted to do for a while now, a complete belt squat breakdown. What they are, what they can do, the benefits, what people get wrong about them, and different options that you have in 2026 at varying price points. First, let's go over what a belt squat is. It's a lower body resistance exercise where the load is attached to a belt that goes around your hips rather than coming from a bar that sits on your back in the case of a back squat or in your hands in the case of a front squat. So rather than getting axial loading, which is any downward compression of your spine that you would normally get from a back squat, you're going to be feeling all this resistance being pulled at the hips. I get it. The distinction is very, very subtle. One sits on your back or in your hands, the other sits around your hips. However, the implications on your training are pretty significant. When you eliminate spinal loading from a squat, there's a few things that happen. Your lower back is no longer going to be a limiting factor. Your core is still going to be engaged, though, to a different degree just because you're not getting all that compressive force from that axial loading from the bar sitting on your back. And your legs are going to be the primary focus. This means your quads, your glutes, and your hamstrings. Believe it or not, some lifters' strength on the back squat isn't really limited by their leg strength, but it's actually the rest of their posterior chain. So the upper back, lower back, core, or a combination of the three. But belt squats bypass this completely by letting you train your legs until they actually get tired. So regardless of how your back feels, you could still push your legs. I definitely need to break this down a little bit further because no spinal loading is the headline for belt squats, but it doesn't really tell the whole story. So here are 5 major benefits that you will for sure get from belt squats. The first I sort of already mentioned, but it's going to allow you to train while you're fatigued. So let's just say that you had deadlifts yesterday and your lower back is absolutely trashed. You cannot do another deadlift today, even if you wanted to. However, your hamstrings and your glutes are totally fine. The belt squat will allow you to continue to push those same muscle groups without putting any extra stress on the rest of your posterior chain. Number 2, and this is really important, the belt squat will allow you to continue training through any injuries or mobility limitations. Lower back injuries and belt squats sort of go together like peanut butter and jelly because even if you have some sort of back injury, chances are you're going to still be able to perform the belt squat again because there's no axial loading. But in the case of mobility limitations, let's just say someone physically cannot perform a barbell back squat just because their shoulders don't allow them to do that. All you need to do is load that weight around your hips and you could still get some sort of squat pattern in without having to put any additional stress on your shoulders. Number 3 is that you'll be able to accumulate even more volume while minimizing the addition of systemic fatigue. What do I mean by this? The barbell back squat, especially when performed heavy for multiple reps and sets, is very hard on your nervous system. And when you think about it, in order to get better at a movement, to get bigger and stronger, you're going to have to perform that movement over and over and over again. But there is a little bit of a workaround. Instead of killing your central nervous system with nothing but back squats because we're not Tom Platz, you could add something in like a belt squat because again, you're taking all that stress off of your spine and you're isolating your legs. So you're able to accumulate more volume and in turn, you're going to be able to get your back squat even stronger. Number 4 is that it's very safe to train the belt squat to absolute failure. When you're training alone, going to failure on regular barbell back squats can be pretty dangerous even if you know what you're doing and you have the proper equipment. So spotter arms, you're training in a monolift, anything like that, it could still be pretty dangerous. But with the belt squat, all you really need to do is sit down on the floor when your legs are absolutely fatigued and you cannot perform another rep. Whereas on a back squat, you're going to have to bail. And especially if you don't know how to, it can be pretty detrimental for a trainee. And number 5 is going to be exercise variety. Even though it's called a belt squat, you don't have to perform just squats. Depending on your setup, you could do things like rows, Romanian deadlifts, and weighted step-ups. Now that I've gone over some benefits, let's go over what people get wrong about the belt squats, both in application and the type of belt squat that they buy for their setup. The first mistake, and it might sound a little bit weird coming from me, but it's people thinking that the belt squat is a one-to-one replacement for the barbell back squat, and I'm here to tell you that is absolutely not the case. Rather, those two movements are meant to complement each other when a lifter is able to perform both of them healthily. So think of it this way. The barbell back squat is going to be a strength-based movement. Use it to get stronger, and the belt squat is meant to stack additional volume on and isolate your legs in a way that a barbell back squat cannot. Use them in tandem with one another. The belt squat is always going to be a tool to get the back squat even stronger. However, if you physically cannot perform a back squat, then a belt squat will be a good substitute. Mistake number 2 is going way too light on a belt squat. People think that because there's no upper body loading, there's no spinal compression, that's an excuse to go light, but that is the absolute last thing that you want to do. Your legs are able to handle significantly more than your lower back, so use the belt squat as an opportunity to test yourself and see what your legs can actually do without the limitations of a bar being on your back. Mistake number 3 is completely ignoring the setup. The positioning of the belt definitely matters. If you set it too high, the pull point is going to be completely off. You set it too low, the movement pattern will break down. The ideal position for the belt will be at or slightly above your hips, not quite your lower back, but play around with those two positions. Spend a few sessions testing some things out. Mistake number 4 is not understanding different resistance mechanics. Different belt squats will have different resistance profiles and lines of pull. Lever belt squats like the Mammoth will create a little bit of an arc, so you might have to sit back a little bit more. Cable or pulley belt squats like the Kodiak will end up having a more vertical line of pull, so it might mimic a traditional squat pattern more than a lever belt squat. Neither is universally better, but you need to be aware of which one you're on, and you might have to adjust your technique based on that. And mistake number 5 is buying the wrong type of belt squat for your space. Standalone machines will always take up a ton of room, and what some people will do is not measure their space, buy a standalone machine, and then realize it takes up way too much space. If you already have a rack, then rack-mounted belt squats are almost always going to be the best options for garage or home gyms. So what's available to you in 2026, and what should you purchase for your home gym? Generally, I'm going to tell people to avoid both ends of the financial spectrum, so the extremely budget side and the extremely expensive side. First, let's talk about the extremely budget. So I'll say $150 and below. These are usually going to be very short lever-based belt squats, so similar to the Mammoth, but that length is decreased drastically. And what this will do is create a very extreme arc, which is something that you generally don't want to see in a belt squat. As I just mentioned, lever-based belt squats will always have at least a little bit of an arc to them, but the shorter that arm becomes, the more extreme that arc is going to be. So $150 and below, I would generally avoid. I'd recommend saving up your money and purchasing something in a similar price bracket to the Mammoth. Now let's look at the other end of the spectrum, the standalone machines, $1,000 and up. I will be the first to sit here and tell you as a Fringe employee that these machines feel fantastic. I have used so many belt squat machines throughout my training career and they all feel great. But looking at it from a home gym owner's perspective, do you really need this machine? Do you really need to take up all this space and all this budget? And the answer 9 times out of 10 is going to be no. Of course, if you have the space and the budget and you want something that feels great, then go out and splurge. I'm not going to stop you. However, for most gym owners, having something that just attaches to your rack like the Mammoth or the Kodiak, and I know this sounds like a sales pitch, but I'm just being objective here, for the majority of gym owners, a more budget-friendly option like that is going to work. Yes, the standalone machines, they feel great. I will never argue that, but you could get almost all that work done on a more budget-friendly option. Here's my honest take on who should get a belt squat. If you train squats regularly, but your lower back is always killing you and it tends to be a limiting factor, then start using one. Find a gym that has one or add one to your home gym now. If you're dealing with any nagging lower back injuries like a slipped or bulging disc, or you have some mobility limitations to the point where you can't physically do a barbell back squat, then getting a belt squat should be your number one priority so you could have that movement pattern in your training. If you're happy with your overall leg training and you're getting sufficient volume and you don't like too much variety, then you don't have to get a belt squat. Though I would recommend experimenting with one so you could see what the hype is all about. This has been Tim with Fringe Sport going over what a belt squat is, the benefits of them, mistakes that people make about belt squats, and different types of belt squats that are available to you in 2026. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to drop it a thumbs up because it helps us out a ton more than you think, and it's free. It's no cost to you, so what are you waiting for? If you want to see any more of our content, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, leave them down below in the comments, and hopefully I'll catch all you in that next video.